here we are again, once again. Thank you very much for being here if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, thank you very much also for watching at all, at any time, in the space-time continuum that we inhabit called reality. It's wonderful. My name is Nick. I'm the creator of HEYS Reviews, and this is episode number 8 of HEYS Reviews Lives, Race Wars to the Bottom. Thank God you arrived. Welcome to the party. Hold on to your butts. Let's get right into it. Hello, here I am. And it's good to be back. I did my last live stream on Monday, and that was a lot of fun. I was full of a cold. I was having to tactically mute myself every so often to sneeze and blow my nose and not open you up to the wonderful sounds the human body can make when it is trying to detox. Today, I have no cold and I have no flu symptoms. I don't think I'm going to be coughing and sneezing. My nose is not running and my feet are not smelling, and my feet are not running and my nose is smelling. So everything is working and as it should be doing today. So that is cool. What is today's episode about? Well, I've called it Race Wars to the Bottom. Bunch of news that has happened recently, and it is happening mainly in and around Europe, all connected with the mingling and the melting of different cultures, different cultural identities, and different religious identities, and different behaviors and traditions, all being chucked into the same geographical location and as an experiment to see what's going to happen. And it's pretty exciting. There's lots of scary stuff going on. And what we're going to look at today is news articles and stories about how this melting and melding of cultures and groups is being kind of steered, and it's being used. It's being used by them, they, them, those. I was listening. I was getting some really useful feedback from a person who's very close to me. And she was asking that I kind of try and avoid and refrain from using they and them because it's a bit vague and it's not very specific. So I've taken your much appreciated feedback on board, and in this episode I am going to be naming names. Right at the end, I'm going to show you a long list of names. A long list of names. Many of those names you're not even going to know who they are, but many of them you will. And so please stick around for that at the end. I've got 2 books to recommend for you today over here to my right. So there's going to be book recommendations. I don't have any clips to play or documentaries or anything like that to recommend today. I still need to practice that because when I was sharing the sound clips in the last stream, I think I messed it up and they came in extremely loud and compared to my softly spoken radio tones, and I don't want to alarm anybody who might be listening to this in a quiet place, or maybe in bed while they're falling asleep, or when they're trying to relax. I would rather this was a more low-key, low energy, not low energy, but soft, gentle, like Blind Boy, the podcaster from Ireland, says he wants to give a podcast hug, and that's how I'd like my broadcast to be, something that's not jarring or triggering in any way. So no clips today. I do have a video to play, but no audio. It's just a visual one. So hopefully you are watching. But if you're just listening, that's also cool. I'm going to try and deliver you some value anyway. So that's what we got coming up. That's a little preview. So we're going to be looking at race and multiculturalism and the white race. Going to get spicy. It's going to get hot, as you can imagine, I'm sure. So let's get into it. Let's have a look. What have I got on queued up for you? All right. So this is the Telegraph. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to blast through a lot of headlines, and they're all from the Telegraph. And I just want to make the point that this topic of race and multiculturalism, it's being stoked. It's being used to drive a wedge between people, to divide and conquer by them. And just as a side note, I should say they. When I say they, think of it, the best way to think of it is as an acronym, THEY, they, the hierarchy enslaving you. Okay, but we'll get onto some names later on. But for now, let's have a look at the Telegraph and see what... I mean, this is a mainstream UK news website of the year. You can see at the top left there, UK news website of the year. I don't know what year. It's probably one of those awards that they just gave to themselves so that they can say they're award winning. But they've been hard at work, you know. There's what the whole media landscape now is to get eyeballs onto websites, and they're not so much concerned about the paper, physical copies of things anymore. People like it to be uploaded and digital into the online space so that it can be edited after the fact and changed and memory hold as needed, depending on the comment sections and the kickback and the pushback. So they can kind of test the waters and see what they can get away with, in terms of what the public will or will not accept. And it's a great way to gather data and intel on public opinion. So in the past, people, they would just print it and it would be out there permanently, you know, and you would get a copy and you read it and you'd be shocked at something and you go around someone, have you read that thing in the paper? No, look, it's here in black and white, it's in print. Now you might have that same experience, and by the time you've got your friend or companion to look at the article, it's been changed or deleted or edited. That's the kind of slippery nature of the internet, where things can be memory held and deleted and erased very quickly. So luckily, there are ways around that. I don't need to use them today because all the headlines I'm about to show you are up there, loud and proud for all to see. I don't think they have any problem leaving them up. But this is Britain. This is from the 5th of December, which was 3 days ago. Britain has opened up its welfare state to the world. Sustained mass immigration is tearing our fragile social contract apart. Okay, thank you, Telegraph. But what else have you got for us? The Tories are preparing another immigration betrayal. Nobody should believe the party seriously intends to cut the numbers arriving. Okay, Telegraph, but what else have you got for us? The liberal elite's assumptions about mass migration are crumbling fast. The establishment's quasi-religious orthodoxy has to change, or else Britain is heading towards trouble. Okay, whoa, look at that picture. That looks like an AI Joe Biden. Oh, it's the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Okay. What else you got for us, Telegraph? Not all migrants are good for Britain. We should only let in the ones who are. Immigration is a numbers game, but some groups also contribute more to the country than others. What else? Unprecedented mass migration threatens to erode our national values. It is almost impossible to effectively integrate such a large number of people at once. Sunak will never recover from this immigration betrayal. We may be reaching the stage when habitual Tory voters yearn for the humiliating defeat of the Tory party. British Liberals are sheltered from the devastating impact of mass migration. First past the post and progressive dogma have contained justified public anger about high numbers. It cannot last. Politicians have created a multicultural monster beyond control. Who gets the blame? We do. The political elite are branding riots in Dublin last week as violently far right. But it's mass migration that presents the real danger. Foreign criminals will serve shorter sentences than Britain's under emergency plan. Proposal for overseas citizens to be freed from UK jails and deported up to 18 months early is criticised by Lords Committee. Okay. So you get the point, I think. I hope that you are seeing where the Telegraph is coming from. And certainly all those headlines, read back to back like that, you can tell that they're very keen on driving some fear and discomfort, and they're sort of whipping up their readers and their readership into a kind of hysterical frenzy to be very uncomfortable with mass migration and immigration. Okay, now, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is that rightly or wrongly a problem or a threat? It's up to you to decide. It's a very sensitive and tricky topic, but you cannot deny that there is a mainstream push to get people to think about it and focus on it and look at it and be aware of it, even though it's been happening for quite a long time. And it has been certainly a part of England and for a very long time, decades and decades and decades. We've had multicultural societies here, different groups living side by side. It has been focused on at various times throughout history at key moments, and they'll bring a lot of focus on it, and then it'll be kind of, we'll not talk about that so much anymore. And so you got to wonder why they are ramping up once again this issue We're coming up to an election probably next year, and so that could be something to do with it. But they're trying to get people focused on and thinking about and talking about this issue. Now, anytime there's a coordinated media effort to all focus and talk about one issue when it's coming from the mainstream, that always means there's something else going on that they don't want you focusing on and talking about. It's they, the hierarchy enslaving you. Right, I'll stop making that joke now. But this is usually a divide tactic. It's kind of like, look at this thing over here, while we reach around and pull your wallet out your pocket and, steal your money. Something like that is going on. So you've always got to be very aware of what is being talked about as well as what is not being talked about and what is happening in the two spheres. But in this case, I've built my today's live stream around this topic because it is actually a very incendiary topic. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about this and they really care about it. And I also have observed the effects of multiculturalism and mass immigration, where you go to towns and cities, and it used to be mainly in cities, but it's increasingly everywhere. There are people in my family who've grown up their whole lives in one place to see it completely transformed into where the people around them no longer look like them or eat the same foods as them or go to the same religious institutions as them. And things are very different. And suddenly you were surrounded by one group of people who had a lot in common, and now it's a totally different group of people, and you don't have anything in common with them. Is that right or is that wrong? Well, again, like I've said in other streams, you got to reverse the idea. Would it be all well and good, for example, for a bunch of Brits to go over to a country in a non-white majority place and start taking over their capital city? I say taking over, like invasion, but I mean to go over there and settle and then become a majority in the capital city of another non-white country. Does that sit okay with you? Sounds a bit like colonialism to me. Sounds a little bit like imperialism. Sounds a little bit like trying to get some of the British Empire back. So the point I'm making is, as it's presented to us, this topic is always kind of lopsided because it's presented that it's okay in one direction and it's not okay in the other direction. And my litmus test is always to flip it and reverse it. And if it's not okay in one direction, then it's not okay in any direction, or there should be some concerns. So Telegraph is whipping up their readership into a hyper-focused mass looking at this issue. So what are some other media outlets saying about it? Let's go back to the article over here. So this is Unheard, and this is from the 21st November, so this article is a little bit older, with Eric Kaufman, and he's asking the question, where is the populist backlash over immigration in Britain? Voters see it as a key issue, but they don't yet recognize its severity. So British voters, especially national populists, are annoyed by small boats, high immigration, and pro-Palestine marches. But most do not yet realize the transformative scale of today's immigration levels. Ahead of the publication of the UK migration statistics later this week, they are not sufficiently agitated to support an electoral insurgency. That sounds like they need to be more agitated, right? It sounds like Unheard is kind of in line with Telegraph to drum up some agitation. We need some more agitation out there in order to harness the power of that agitation and get people into the voting booth. Although, yeah, they do have booths here. So that could be what's going on, right? So YouGov's most important issues tracker shows that immigration is, for the first time since Brexit, the top issue for Conservatives and a leading concern for 37% of the public. So, yeah, for the first time in a while, I think. Those who have noticed substantially higher immigration since Brexit are much less likely to agree with sacking the former Home Secretary than other voters. So this was to do with Suella Braverman's sacking. Some people celebrated it. Most people, I think, were probably indifferent, because I think the silent majority in most cases recognizes that all this stuff is nonsense and theatre. But yeah, we got voters who say immigration has not risen a lot support sacking Braverman. So it's about perception. It's about do you perceive immigration happening, or do you not? Do you live in an area that is isolated from it, or do you live in an area where the hotels are being filled with people arriving on dinghies, and your town and village is sort of doubling in size and population overnight? So it's really about where you live, what's happening where you live, what do you see every day, who do you see around you. That's going to have a massive effect on your perception, unless you're going out to actively seek the independent researchers and journalists who are trying to cover this on the ground, in person. Those people don't get major platforms. They don't get published in the Telegraph or on the BBC News, but they are out there and they are doing that work. So they are there to find. So the writer here is asking respondents to summarize Braverman in a few words. Left liberal critiques tended to paint her as a nasty racist. Conservative respondents who worry about immigration but think she should be sacked tend to see her as a rude, ambitious, uncaring, and obnoxious, as the word cloud below reveals. And this word cloud was pretty funny. So this is a word cloud about Suella Braverman, and look at some of the words you got in there. Can we blow this up and make it bigger? I don't think we can, but hopefully you can see that. And some of these I don't even want to read, but we got a hypocrite, callous, despicable, heartless, disappointed, obnoxious, woke, foolish, right-wing. Right-wing. We're going to come back to that term pretty soon in this show, but right-wing, formidable, Rottweiler. Someone called her a Rottweiler. And there's a TWAT there. That's another one. So it's kind of a mix. There's a couple of good words in here. Ambitious, courageous. Outspoken is not necessarily a good thing. It's kind of neutral. But mainstream media coverage may have shaped the perceptions of such voters. May have, possibly. It might have possibly affected them. Maybe people, download their opinions and their views from the mainstream media. Maybe. Anyway, moving on with the article, he's telling us that net migration to Britain declined a bit between 2016 and 2021 due to Brexit and the pandemic. However, it has reached an unprecedented 500,000 to 700,000 during the last 2022 to 2023. And that is presumably, I guess they're going off like a financial year, maybe April to April. So that might not even include what's the numbers of people who've arrived since April. But these channel crossings have soared. Brexit and the pandemic have faded as issues, but the economy is still nearly as important as immigration for Conservatives, with healthcare at 43%. So Conservatives care about healthcare and having a healthy population, and almost as much as they care for immigration and the amount of people coming here to live here. So a little final point from this writer. It took 4 years for the record-breaking immigration levels under Tony Blair to begin costing him votes, several more for it to fuel the rise of the BNP, and a decade to power UKIP's rise. Reform UK is up a few points since May, sometimes reaching 10%, but public opinion is a tanker that takes time to change course. As it does, it is likely to further split the Tories before becoming a hospital pass for Starmer. Yeah, so he's kind of, I don't really dive into the political analysis too much. The red team, the blue team, they're both the same team as far as I'm concerned. They're almost indistinguishable at this point. You can't tell them apart from the colored ties that they wear. But I think the article stands to show us that, some people are very hyper aware of immigration and the amount of it happening, and they're witnessing the changes to their communities and the places they live and the people walking on the street. Other people are kind of blissfully unaware. They might just live in an area that isn't attractive or doesn't have any sort of big demographic changes over their lifetimes, so they might not view it as an issue. I think that's a key thing to bear in mind when people are getting disagreeing and talking about this kind of topic, is that where they live and the situations they live in, extremely critical and in shaping their views. And you got to bear it in mind when you're talking to people, particularly like when you are thinking about older people. Oh, that guy over there, he's just a racist. He's just an old miserable racist bastard type thing. Well, like I said, he might have lived his whole life in one place to see it completely transformed, and he didn't have a say in that. He never voted for bring a load of this other culture, this other national identity, this other religious group here. But it's happened, and it's been done to him by them. They're doing it. It's them. All right, what else have we got? So this is a really good article, this next one I'm going to bring up. And actually, I meant to push this towards the end of the show. But we'll just do it now because it's here, and I'm here, and let's get on with it. So this is a long read in Spiked called How Multiculturalism Fuels hate. The elite ideology has cultivated and inflamed ethnic tensions. So I think it's important to bear in mind and realize that none of this stuff is happening by accident. And as I'm going to show you later in the episode, there is a plan, or at least the inklings of a plan, or the implication of a plan that goes back quite a while. But I think this article is very fair, and it makes very good points that are worth getting on the record. So we've got Suella Braverman. So she was the one who was described as a Rottweiler in the last episode. She's a British Home Secretary, and she declared multiculturalism has failed in Europe. How dare you? She also argued that multicultural policies have fueled this fracturing of society into sometimes antagonistic identity groups. She said, multiculturalism makes no demands of the incomer to integrate, she said. It has failed because it allowed people to come to our society and live parallel lives in it. Oh, that is why she got sacked. You're not allowed to say that. That is the verboten. Whether or not it's happening, you're not allowed to talk about it. Just don't talk about it. Don't mention it. Don't say that. Don't have that opinion. You bigot. You Rottweiler. Get out. You're sacked. Whether or not she's right, you should be able to talk about these things. But that is not the day and the age that we live in. Unless you are brave and you have the... I was going to say you have the balls. But even that's something you're not allowed to talk about these days, is it? The confidence and the conviction to get out there and get into this debate and this discussion and talk to people and put your name to your words publicly and not shy away from things that people that trigger people and upset people. You know, they're the real heroes of this time, the people who are standing up for free speech and trying to drum up some kind of conversation around these topics that most people just avoid. So, you know, fair play to her for actually planting a flag with an opinion and saying this. So the article, the writer says, to our cultural and political elites, and they're not elites, but I'm going to have to just say that because that's what he wrote, criticizing multiculturalism is now tantamount to heresy. Yep. Predictably, Braverman was swiftly denounced as a racist, and her speech presented as a threat to migrant communities. So I didn't hear the whole speech. I probably should have looked at it, but at least in these quotes here, there's nothing racist or hateful. She's just stating her opinion on what she sees happening, and she's not the only one, as we'll see later in the article. But before we get to that, Rishi Sunak, he responded by praising Britain's fantastic multicultural democracy, and he said, "We have done an incredible job of integrating people into society." If what you mean by integrating people into society is that they occasionally buy a pasty from Greggs and they do their shopping in Primark, then yeah, I guess we have integrated them into society. Yet the response to her criticism of multiculturalism was particularly over the top. It seems that anyone who draws attention to its failures is likely to provoke the hostility of the great and the good, the do-gooders, and to be excused of xenophobia and racism. So you can see the jump that happens there. You say this isn't working. I don't like what it's doing to my communities and my the places where I grew up, and the things are being changed rapidly. And you say that, and they call you a racist, and they say you're being xenophobic. Okay, so it's you can see it's a, I don't know what the exact term is for this fallacy, false equivalence maybe. But you say one thing, and maybe straw man fallacy. You say one thing, and they act as though you're saying a completely different thing and respond to you, and they don't hear what the words you're actually saying. This happens all the time because people have been dumbed down by schooling, and they haven't been trained to listen actively and properly. Because most people don't listen with a view to understanding; they listen with the intention to respond. So when you're halfway through your sentence, they've already jumped ahead to finish the sentence, so they know what you're going to say, and they're planning their response. And then in many cases, they just start with their response before you've even finished your sentence. So it's very frustrating to talk to people who do this. I get extremely triggered. This is why I prefer just sitting here talking to a camera, because nobody can respond and interrupt me. And I've got the power to keep talking without being interrupted and say what I want to say. I know I do love talking to people, but I do get triggered when people are unable to listen long enough for me to get a sentence out, or a few sentences even. I love it when I can actually get a few sentences out without being interrupted. That's always a good day for me. But that's what's happening. People are getting their perfectly valid worries, concerns, and opinions turned into transformed in the minds of the listener into hateful, xenophobic racism. And it's just not what is happening. So it hasn't always been this way. In the recent past, the failure of multiculturalism was highlighted on numerous occasions by mainstream political leaders. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, she said multiculturalism has utterly failed. Nicolas Sarkozy and British Prime Minister David Cameron have also echoed this sentiment. David Cameron said, state multiculturalism was one of the causes of terrorism. Criticism of multiculturalism was more permissible a decade ago because the threat posed by global jihadism was still fresh in the minds of European elites. Advocates of multiculturalism try to silence their critics, chucking out accusations of racism. As they do so, they consciously avert their eyes to the profound social tensions in our midst, from gangs of Muslim and Hindu youths fighting each other on the streets of Leicester last year to the anti-Israel protesters marching through European cities this year. So those two things occurred. In terms of the gangs, this was a way bigger problem than the second one, and I don't think they should be linked together in this way. Anti-Israel protesters, they weren't violently clashing and trying to murder each other on the streets, right? They were they're out there expressing solidarity and trying to communicate awareness about war crime and ethnic cleansing and just crazy over-the-top retaliation for what was a horrific attack in the first place. But they shouldn't be equated with gangs fighting each other. But again, you can't talk about these things because you're racist, bigoted, xenophobe. Indeed, the ideology of multiculturalism thrives in the absence of a vision for society to which everyone feels they can belong. The absence of such a vision is not accidental. It is due to multiculturalism's insistence that no set of values can be regarded as superior to any other or looked upon as the desirable norm. So this, in its essence, I'm going to give you the term for exactly what this person is talking about, even though they don't use it, is moral relativism. It's relative cultural relativism and moral relativism. The idea being with that, and I'll just come to big camera here, is you get to make up what's important, what values are important to you, and that's right. And no one person's set of values are better or worse than anybody else. We have to tolerate, and everybody's diverse individual set of values and morals and behaviors, because everybody is special and wonderful and perfect and unique as they are. Nobody needs to change. And if there is some sort of established set of cultural behaviors and traditions and values, then that is the enemy, and anyone who goes against that, doesn't fit into that, needs to be protected and loved and give them a pat on the head and tell them how brave and special they are. And this is an absolute recipe for disaster, because then you get people who are into some really weird shit saying, well, I'm allowed to be into it because nobody's values and morals are better than anyone else's. It's all relative. We get to make it up. We are the arbiters of reality. We are gods in this world, and we can decide the way to live and what is best, and everyone has to respect it. And you can't say anything about my habits and my tastes, and no matter how weird or strange or gruesome or perverted or degraded they are, I have a right to them. So this is relativism at the very core of it. And this is what's kind of leading to all this, and this is what's under attack, is that you can't just say, no, actually, this behavior is better than this one, this value is better than this one. And you're not allowed anymore to have that discussion and debate and reasoned argumentation in order to iron these things out. It's one of the reasons why I really look up to people who are still brave enough to get on the microphone and do that publicly. But it's always on, channels on YouTube. No, not necessarily YouTube these days, but it's always on independent podcasts and independent websites. You don't get any of this in the mainstream, because all the mainstream is designed to do is to to put fuel on the fire of tensions and drive that wedge between people and get people hating on the other group and blaming the other group when it's not the other group, it's them. It's they, who I'm going to name later on. But yeah, relativism. Absolutely dangerous and untenable strategy for having social harmony and a civilizational success. So the absence of a cohering national vision for society, of a coherent sense of a nation's shared values and traditions, should therefore be regarded as a direct achievement of multiculturalism. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We don't have a coherent national vision that we can all sign up to and agree with. And the article is really long, so I don't think I can get through all of this. There's a bit of history here, trying to explain how we got to this point, which I think leaves a lot out. It really leaves a lot out, but I'm going to give you a resource that doesn't leave a lot out and does a much better job than these 3 paragraphs here. But there's a few points I wanted to mention before we move on. Britain's main public institutions now seem embarrassed by any display of patriotism. The arrogant imperial attitudes of the past have given way to a sense of shame about Britain's history and its present. Those still given to displays of patriotism are marginalized as relics, or, worse still, condemned as racists and xenophobes. Yeah, that's so true. You know, people want to display. You know, I always make the example that when I lived in Vietnam, it's really common for whole groups of school children or co-workers and colleagues to go on holiday together, and they'll have a retreat and they'll all wear t-shirts with the Vietnam flag on, which is red background and a yellow 5-pointed star in the center. And they'll all wear this openly and proudly with a belief in the culture and their society. Whereas if you saw the same here, what immediately springs to people's minds is exactly what this article has just said here, which is like racist, xenophobic morons. The association has been placed there by the mind controllers, such as Edward Bernays, who I covered in the last stream, by the people who form and the hidden government that forms and shapes opinions and molds what associations people have in their minds, right? So in Vietnam, the population has not been programmed with this shame about their country, and they haven't been programmed with an association of the flag and a sense of, what did they say here? Embarrassment. But in England, we've been programmed that way by television, films, radio. All of that stuff has programmed us to be ashamed and embarrassed about our flag, to assume that anybody who has pride in the country and the flag is an idiot, and to feel ourselves superior to them, which is, an incredibly subversive thing to do to a country, and is only something that the enemy of the country would do. So that's what I'm saying as well. You've got enemies. When I say they and them, it's your enemies. It's the people who don't want to see your success, your happiness, and your freedom in this life. They don't want to see your situation get better, and they certainly don't want to see your children and grandchildren have a better time of it. So they're working hard on that plan and to roll it out, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. But for this article, it's a very long one. I've highlighted so much of it, I can't get through it all now. But we've got Gordon Brown and Tony Blair got to mention. There's a loss here of a national purpose, which I think is very true. And the argument is that the British elites had hoped multiculturalism could fill the void left by the loss of national purpose. I don't think they hoped. I think they've just that was the plan, and they've been told to fulfill it and ram it through, right? So I don't think it's like, oh, what can we do? Let's just multiculturalism. The plan, that's what they've been told to do. That's the part that this article leaves out, and these mainstream articles always leave out, is the planning and the evidence for the planning and the reasoning as written down in the books by the people who were close to the planners. It talks about the constant apologies from public institutions for for Britain's history, knee-taking acts of contrition, have merely fueled the demand for more apologies and more denunciations of Britain. Yeah, grievance culture. reparations, all this kind of nonsense for things done in the past by other people. But no, it's our fault. It's my fault. It's us. We're the bad people. And that is pushed really hard and heavy. So we're going to see a little bit more about that in further articles. Cool. That's one there for you to check out. That's going to be in the links below. Long read, but a good one. But it leaves a lot out. Right, next we got Cap X. So this is about Dublin last Thursday. But it wasn't last Thursday by this point. This was back in November, mid-November. Dublin City was a war zone. Violent mobs rioted for 3 hours in what's been described as the worst disorder experienced for decades. Vehicles, police cars set on fire, 3 buses and trams destroyed, huge destruction, leaving shops badly damaged and windows broken. 3 adults and 2 children were injured. The suspect is reported to be an Irish citizen in his late 40s who has lived in the country for 20 years. But beyond this, little is known about the attack. I highlighted that because I don't know if there's any more detail about this man. But what I do know is that when certain colored people commit crimes, their color doesn't get mentioned. And then when a different colored people commit crimes, their color always gets mentioned. So the fact that there is no color mentioned for this person leads me to think it might be a specific color that doesn't get mentioned and linked to crimes, because if you link a certain color to crimes, then that's racism. Police and politicians have warned those who want to find out more details about this man. You got to be careful of misinformation. Yet, astonishingly, amid the destruction of the riots and the violence of the knife attack, one fact has been firmly established. Police and politicians alike are, it seems, absolutely certain about the motive of the rioters. They were far right. This article is telling us, like, it's pretty amazing how they figured this out, because they managed to come to this conclusion within hours. I think it says 500 rioters, and they managed to figure out that all 500 of them were motivated by a far right ideology. It just says here, far right ideology. It is remarkable that while stabbed victims remain in a critical condition in hospital and with flames barely extinguished, Ireland's leaders have found the time to complete a comprehensive analysis into the political ideology driving the rioting mob. Or at least, this would be remarkable if far right hadn't become a catch-all label wheeled out repeatedly whenever our political and cultural elite want to express their contempt for a group of people while also shutting down any further discussion. Yeah, it is. It's a weaponized term and it's used to shut people down. I've been accused of not accused, but I've been labeled. The stuff I listen to has been labeled as alt-right by a family member. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. You know, I don't even know what far right means, because as I've explained before, far right and far left are the same thing. They're both authoritarian. They're both imposing their views and politics and opinions by force. So it's meaningless. But people are much more scared of being far right and being labeled as such. And people feel good if somebody's labeled far right, or if somebody's labeled a racist, then they feel good dismissing them and not listening to anything they say or do and writing them off automatically. Okay, so I know people who've been described as racist. When I've spoken to them, I've had really good conversations with them and found out they're not at all racist, right? But the person who said they were racist doesn't listen to them, doesn't talk to them, and writes them off and thinks they know better. And it's the same thing here. It's far right. So therefore, there was no deeper reason than just they were motivated by that ideology, which we all know we're better than, and we can all just feel good about ourselves, and we don't have to ask any deeper questions. So the beauty of crying far right is that it works on the world stage too. The election of Javier Milei in Argentina, far right. Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, also far right. Likewise, Orbán in Hungary and Italy's Giorgia Meloni. Actually, Meloni, according to one Guardian columnist, is not merely far right, but fascist adjacent. And then, of course, there's Donald Trump, who is neither far right nor fascist adjacent, but straight up fascist. I think people need to go and look up the definition of fascist as described by Mussolini. Stop throwing it around because you're showing your own ignorance. So this part of the article I really liked, because it says the way a violent mob rampaged through the centre of Dublin last night was reprehensible. But far-right does little to explain their actions. We need to know who were the people involved, what motivated them to come together and act in this way. Do they see themselves as protesters, or do they have more in common with London's Oxford Street pranksters and shoplifters? Was the riot a product of politics, fury, or nihilism? Simply crying far right prevents any of these questions from being asked. Exactly. And that is the point of the far right label. That is the point of the racist label. That is the point of all of these pejorative labels that get thrown out, is to simply stop you asking questions, get you to switch your mind off, get you to write that person off completely, not pay attention to anything they might be saying. Why would anybody want you to do that? That is the question. Next question you should be asking. All right, let's move on swiftly. So this is about knife attacks in France. Okay, so 9 witnesses say they heard knife attackers being anti-white, but French prosecutor claims no evidence attack was racially motivated. Because again, it works in one direction and not the other direction, is what we're told, and is what they're trying to drum up and make us and have us believe. If this was reversed, if there were 9 witnesses said they heard knife attackers being anti-non-white, then they would have no problem publishing that information everywhere, far and right, racially motivated murders. They'd probably get called far right. That's the world we live in now. It's going one way and not the other way. So this was the Village Bowl knife attack, which left 16-year-old Thomas Perotto dead and many other partygoers wounded. So a horrific tragedy. Thomas was stabbed in the heart. 3 other victims appear to have been stabbed or slashed in the upper chest or neck area. 9 persons have been arrested. The strange thing that this article focused on, which I wasn't aware of, is that they keep using this word thorax instead of neck. The thorax appears to be a euphemism which has been adopted by French authorities in order not to say neck. So, you know, if you got 2 headlines to choose between, one is cut wound, man has thorax cut, and then the other one is man has throat slashed or neck slashed. It's very different. It's very powerful, isn't it? So there's this kind of pattern emerging where people are having their throats cut. Excuse me. And the French the mainstream media in France seem to be kind of softening this and calling it thorax. I guess they should call it the thorax attacks. Oh, that would have been a good name for my episode today. Not a good, but anyway. Thorax. So the Crépol attack is not an isolated incident, but in fact part of a long series of unprovoked knife attacks in France, which virtually always involve wounds to the thorax. It's the thorax attacks. Come on. Can't believe I'm the only one who thought of that. These guys need to give me a job. This is the Daily Skeptic. I promote them enough on this channel. Come on, boys. Get me on board. Pay me. Give me money. So this goes on to detail some of the other attacks and how they're reportedly wounded in the thorax. This was pretty interesting here. As reported in the daily Le Parisien, according to the public prosecutor, no fewer than 9 victims or witnesses of the Crépol attack say they heard the assailants making hostile remarks about whites. According to partygoers interviewed by the Dauphiné Libéré, the assailants said they were also there to stab or kill white people. There's a video clip going around in which the people use the term fucking guer, which is apparently a slur used by people of North African Arab descent for native French people. So, guer. Another sources claim that the assailants said they were going to kill c'est fran, which is an inversion of français, and it's another slang expression for native French. Public prosecutor insists, however, that there is not sufficient basis for establishing a racist motive for the attack. Very good work, public prosecutor. Protect the narrative at all costs. Bury your head in the sand, and you will be handsomely rewarded by them. All right, moving on. What's next? Epoch. I always call it the Epoch Times, but then I hear people in America calling it the Epic Times, and it's obviously not epic. It's an O, right? Epoch. Epoch. But anyway, I'm going to stick with Epoch. This is about the BBC acknowledging controversy over white privilege following a complaint. Yeah, so as I was saying, it's drummed up in one direction, And this is to really, really incense and anger and aggravate the people who we are told are white, even though they're not white. There's no such thing as white people in the world. They're kind of pinky, you know. They're sort of, I don't know, maybe a kind of beige if you're not healthy, maybe a bit yellow if you're jaundiced, but they're certainly not white. But anyway, you get my point. There's this concept called white privilege, which is like if you are labeled with this label, then you're privileged and you have it easy and good and everything is hunky-dory and you never suffer and you never struggle, and you need to check yourself and check your privilege before you go about complaining, about anything, right? Get it under control. The director of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, called the BBC's article woke gobbledygook. That's a great word there, gobbledygook. The BBC has acknowledged that the idea of white privilege is a contested concept following a complaint about its youth-oriented news services. Controversial definition of the term. So this is from BBC's Newsround, which I used to watch as a kid. And all Newsround is a show that is designed to groom children into watching mainstream media news as they get older. So it's like get them young, get them into that habit, make them think that this media, this is there to help them and educate them and teach them and inform them. And if you get them young into that habit while they're young, they'll maintain it into later life and later adulthood and not seek out any alternative sources, which are often way better than the BBC, which I think is the Big Brother Corporation. I think that's what it stands for. But anyway, they've conceded that it's a contested area, white privilege, which follows a complaint by the group Don't Divide Us. Now, they sound terrible, don't they? Don't divide us. They should be Don't Divide and Conquer Us. But the BBC's response was labelled a bureaucratic. Because what they did was they told the group Don't Divide Us that, oh, sorry, you missed the deadline for complaints, and now we don't have to. Sorry, too late. You can imagine them just going with and the door just shuts in their face. Sorry, tap the just tapping the watch. Sorry, there's nothing we can do about it now. The deadline for your complaints is closed. Just absolute scum. So that Baroness Fox is weighing in. She's saying BBC has no self-knowledge at all that there's anything problematic about it, and it shows how any sense of what impartiality is has been completely compromised. Yeah, the BBC is not impartial. No mainstream media news source is impartial, and in fact, impartiality is an incredibly difficult thing for anybody to manage. But some people, some speakers, some researchers do it much better than others. And at the very least, you can be open about your biases. At the very least, telling people what your bias might be, and encouraging people not to believe you, but to go and do their own research and reading, and provide them with the links and the sources underneath, which is what the best people do. Can kind of offset some of that difficulty with being truly impartial. But yeah, the BBC, write them off. No point even going there for anything these days. I didn't want what they said removed, so I think this is a good resolution, says Baroness Fox. The problem was that they commissioned it in the first place and didn't think about the fact that maybe it was problematic to preach what is effectively a hierarchy based on skin color with a whole range of historical assumptions. Exactly. So all this white privilege stuff, it feeds into a hierarchy. It is racism. I've said it before, but critical race theory, which I think is mentioned in either this article or the next one, it is racism. It's just the opposite direction, right? It's like, okay, white people are racist against non-white people. Therefore, in order to fix that, we need to encourage non-white people to be racist against white people. And that's fair, and that's justice. It's just so stupid. Yeah, Toby Young, he has a quote here. It's reflexive groupthink with no real thought or philosophy underpinning it. The lesson here is we should always fight back whenever any institution spouts this nonsense. This is to do. He's talking. Yeah, here it is. So CRT. So he's talking about this gobbledygook CRT, critical race theory. CRT is a left-wing academic framework that originated in the United States. And before that, France, examining how race intersects with social structures and institutions. it's a complete load of bollocks, as we say in England. But this is where you might be in your job finding that you're being told to do unconscious bias training. And you might be having to, acknowledge your privilege, check your privilege, and check your unconscious bias. And maybe there's even organizations and academic organizations out there that are actively working to inhibit the prospects and the success of white people, which is the definition of racism. But the consequences of this CRT stuff are that young people in this country are expressing views like Jews are the colonial settler state, Palestinians are the victims. The failure to challenge these ideas has allowed them to take root and become completely normalized. So I put this bit in pink. I'm going to cycle through it in the different colors, because this is like the little shiny bit nugget at the end of the article. The rest of it is all very sensible and very cogent and makes good points. And then at the end, they just have to swing it around to the current thing and say that the reason that all this stuff is stupid and should be abandoned, CRT, which, it absolutely should be abandoned and forgotten about and just dismantled and thrown in the bin. But the reason is turning young people into anti-Semites. Just absolute, unbelievable, blatant worship of the current thing. But, we got to expect that from the epoch times. All right, moving on. We got I didn't go into this one too much, I don't think. No, I didn't highlight this one, but I wanted to get it on the record for you, because this is the BBC declaring black women were most likely to die in the medieval plague after unnamed academics at the Museum of London collect doubtful statistics on 145 medieval skeletons in an uncited, unavailable study. So this is just an example of how the historical record is being rewritten. You might have noticed that non-white actors and actresses are being cast in roles like that are just historically white people. So, would you do it the other way around? Would you cast a white actor to play Martin Luther King? No, that's stupid. So why is it okay in one direction and not the other? That's the question you got to ask. And here's an example of they're going back in time. And they're saying that certain Roman emperors were trans, and now they're saying that even the plague was racist. even the black plague. It's called the Black Plague. Oh, we should have known. We should have known from the start. It's called the Black Plague. Big red flag right there. All right, moving on. How are white people being treated at Vancouver Art Gallery? Well, they're being allowed to compare their faces to infamous Nazis. Oh, yay. Doesn't that sound fun? So this is the Vancouver Art Gallery, and they've got an exhibit on which has a whiteness timeline, and some other wonderful stuff. Now, this article I put up here, it's a National Post. It's a good intro, and then we got the next article is even better. But this is just telling us about this. Yeah, look at that. So that's one of the exhibits there. So it's a load of non-white. Also, I don't even know what the hell. So this is kind of teapots. I guess it's like a tea party. And then we got look at that one over there. It's blackface. Is that even allowed? Whew, I don't know. But lots of beheaded weirdness going on. I have no idea what that means. Modern art these days is, well, look at it. That's what it is. Look at all these teacups. They're all white though. That's offensive. Can't be having that. So one of the feature exhibits at the Vancouver Art Gallery right now is an installation framing whiteness as a force of cultural erasure, and even includes an Aryan recognition tool in which visitors are invited to gauge their visual similarity to a Nazi leader. So it says right now, this is November the 13th, so it's a month ago. The exhibit is called Conceptions of White. And it's intended to help visitors grapple with contemporary configurations of white identity. So it's got a spot of negative attention. The exhibit tells white people to stop talking, enjoy discomfort, check their privilege, and vocalize their ignorance. And that was a post by a social media account, End Wokeness. And that's come on, this guy or girl social media account. They must be just drumming this up into nothing, right? They must be misquoting. Nope, all that is absolutely true. That's what the exhibit does. So then there's been a critical profile by True North Center columnist Lindsay Shepherd, and that's what we're going to look at next, because that is really good. So there is a little intro, but we'll go to this True North article, columnist Lindsay Shepherd, because she did a great job. So this is from True North. I haven't been to this website before, but this is Lindsay Shepherd, an insider look at the Vancouver Art Gallery's anti-white exhibit. So after you fork over $30 for admission, geez, I really like the tone this one's written. It did give me a good chuckle. And take the stairs to the third floor. The first thing to catch your eye is a giant phrase on the wall that reads, "When you're the problem, we're the solution." What a great bit of marketing that is right there. They should have said, "We're the final solution." That would have really made it all clear and open and honest and transparent. But I think they want to leave a bit of mystery. The text is accompanied by a large headshot of a white male. Gallery attendees then have the opportunity to interact with an AI program on a set of tablets. "Stop talking. Never share an uninvited opinion again," text on the wall reads. "When you look into the tablet, a mute symbol is superimposed over your mouth." It's incredible. "Check privilege. Learn whether you're special or just lucky," the text reads. Upon looking into the tablet, a halo that says "undeserving" appears over your head. "Get curious. Vocalize your own ignorance." The tablet prompts me to say aloud, "I know nothing." Say, "I know." Look at it. Oh, that's so funny. I sauntered over to the gallery security guard. "Do people find this funny?" I asked her, gesturing at the tablet display. After all, the artist behind her work had described it as tongue-in-cheek. Cheeky artist. "No," she said with a sheepish smile. "They don't like it?" "No," she shook her head. Imagine being this security guard. Oh, it's comedy. So there's a computer station with a webcam, which is the Aryan recognition tool. "How Aryan are you?" the screen reads. Unfortunately for her, it was out of order, so she couldn't use it. But fortunately for us, it's here online and it's in order. So if you want to find out how much of a Nazi you are, or how likely you are to be a Nazi, you can just come here and upload your face into this. And I haven't done it. Of course I'm not going to do it. It's bloody stupid. But the main reason I haven't done it is because look at this paragraph here. "Hunt Nazis. Could face recognition be used to detect genocidal predators or even casual racists? Find out whether your face matches any of the 1900 examples of Aryans we've gathered." So one is they're conflating Aryans with genocidal predators and casual racists. Is that correct? I think that is a sort of deliberate conflation, kind of along the lines of Semites in the term anti-Semites. But on the topic of AI and technocracy, you can see where this is going, isn't it? Facial scans to get in and out of buildings and to pay for things, that already exists. That is already underway. Facial scans to unlock your phone, that already exists. And pretty soon it's going to be, "Please scan your face here. Oh, you're a racist. We got to put you in prison. Bye-bye." Just unbelievable. It's just so... Oh, goodness. The computer program claimed to measure how your face compared to the facial measurements of the most infamous leaders of the Third Reich. She says, "Sign me up." Could facial recognition be used to detect genocidal predators? I was so eager to do so, but darn, an out of order sign was propped up on the camera. Now, I just want to pause there, and I just want to say, imagine if you get a lot of non-white people and you tell them to scan their face and you compare their face with the most infamous and egregious of non-white criminals and murderers and psychopaths of the past. And you use that, and then you insinuate that you're going to use that tech to figure out whether non-white people are likely to be genocidal maniacs. Right? So, again, stick it in reverse. Just play the opposite game.
Does it work in one direction? No, then it doesn't work in the other direction. I've said it, and I'm going to keep saying it. But just imagine that. Just imagine this same thing, but all about non-white people, and it would be shut down. There would be outrage. They would be defunded immediately. But as we find out, who is funding this stuff? Well, you're funding it. Taxpayers are funding it. So she carries on. The next major installation was a timeline that spanned about 15 feet long, an incomplete timeline of the circumstances that influenced the emergence and evolution of white racial identity, it read. I learned that as a white Canadian born in the mid-1990s, my identity is defined by slavery, scientific racism, Rudyard Kipling's 1899 poem, The White Man's Burden, colonialism, the Ku Klux Klan, the Third Reich, the alt-right, and Robert DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. The last items in the timeline of white terribleness were 2013 Black Lives Matter founded and 2021 January 6th insurrection. The insurrection where everybody showed up unarmed and were allowed to go into the Capitol building by police, and that's all on camera. And it's a massive, massive, massive stretch to call that what happened on that day an insurrection. It really is. But there it is, insurrection. So she is exhausted, and she's had a really sort of dismal time after paying $30 and not being able to compare herself with the Arian on the Arian AI facial scanning machine. But she says on the way out of the screening room, I asked a couple visiting Vancouver from Australia whether they liked the exhibit. I was horrified, devastated, and saddened, the man said, before praising the exhibit and trailing off about violence and so many wars. The man had been successfully programmed into hating his heritage. Boom, that is it. That's it. I'm going to scroll through and make that bit colorful and flashy. That's what it's all about. Programming you to hate your heritage. So does this link maybe to the story we were reading earlier on about how there's no shared national identity for people to rally behind and get behind now? Maybe it does, as they say in Canada. We are a culture that preaches self-love. Individuals should be self-confident, self-respecting, and self-reliant. But how can white people love themselves if they are told repeatedly that they are oppressors, purveyors of violence, and racist just for existing? This is what the CRT stuff does. This is what the CRT stuff that's being broadcast and taught to your children by a BBC Newsround does. It teaches this, especially when it is the high culture institutions like galleries, museums, and universities beating them over the head with this message. Exactly. The exhibit was palpably hateful and designed to demoralize. Yeah, demoralization. That is one of the stages, stage 3 maybe, in the KGB, the KGB's methodology for subverting a nation, and that was told to us by Yuri Bezmenov, and the infamous interview with Yuri Bezmenov from the, oh my goodness, when was that from? The 1980s, conducted by G. Edward Griffin. If you can find that, I would highly recommend you watch it. It was as if I had just exited a zone of concentrated psychological warfare. Boom, nail on the head. This is psychological warfare. That is exactly what is happening. That is exactly what I'm trying to lay down for you in this episode, is that all this stuff, all this fueling the fire is divisive because it's psychological warfare used with the intention of dividing and conquering. And then at the end, my trip to the Vancouver Art Gallery, 0 out of 5 stars. Well, I'm not surprised. All right, moving on, carrying on. So this is a University of Washington. This is from December 6th, 2 days ago, 2023. This is a University of Washington, and it's a story about how they are not hiring white people. So we got a recent internal investigation into faculty hiring at the University of Washington reveals the exhaustive efforts that universities make to discriminate against white job applicants. In the 2020 to 2021 academic year, the department hired only Black, Indigenous, people of color candidates for 5 tenure track positions. And the reason is because they've been given a handbook. And the handbook is the Promising Practices Handbook. which explains how to avoid hiring white people. Basically, that's what it does. The handbook served as a how-to manual in the 2022 to 2023 academic year, ensuring that a BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, People of Color, candidate would be hired for the department's only tenure-track professorship that year. First, the handbook advises recruiters to prepare for success by developing a strategy for how to hire people based on race. This is racism, right? This is just outright, overt, blatant, obvious, on the face of it, racism. But it's the good kind of racism. It's the acceptable kind of racism. It's the kind of racism that we want. It's the racism that makes the world better. You know, we don't want the racism that makes the world worse. We want the racism that makes things better. The good, the moral racism. So this handbook is telling people, the handbook carefully ranks favored minority groups, specifically Black, African, American, Latinx. What's that? Latinx. Sounds like a deodorant. Hispanic or American Indian Indigenous, above less preferred ones, specifically Asian American or Middle Eastern American. Next, the handbook recommends drafting job descriptions that match the resumes of specific minority candidates. So firstly, you got to find someone from a minority, and then you got to read their resume, and then you have to craft a job description using the language. Here it says, consider using similar language. Using the language on the person's resume. What? A hiring committee should also refrain from evaluating candidate competence. Can you believe that I'm even reading that sentence? Committees should deconstruct how evaluating candidates on their productivity, verbal communications or skills or leadership may advantage privileged groups over underrepresented groups. And we all know who the privileged groups are, don't we? The University of Washington has apologized to the top-ranked white finalist who was denied a job. Oh, well, good. Well, at least he got an apology. That's better than nothing. Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discriminating against job applicants based on race. Yeah. I mean, it's just clown world. Upside down, inside out world. But it is not just academic institutions and museums that are pushing and getting on board with all this garbage stupidity. It's also the NSA. Do you know who the NSA are? If not, I got a book for you. Please bear with me 1 second. Two resources, actually. But the NSA, let me just get my chair into the correct position. The NSA is, big cam, America's National Security Agency and its special relationship with Britain's GCHQ. This is James Bamford. This is the Puzzle Palace. This is considered to be one of the most authoritative works on the NSA, and it's quite a formidable tome. You can see there at the top, I put that little blue tab in. That is the references and the footnotes and the index. So there's a good chunk of resource at the back of this book as well, further reading that you can dive into. But the Puzzle Palace, James Bamford, that is the one you want to. This one gets cited all over the place in lots of other books when dealing with espionage and statecraft, and it's from 1982. The Puzzle Palace, and that's the NSA. The other thing you can do, let me see if I can very quickly, on the fly, get a resource for you, is go directly to the horse's mouth. And what do I mean by that? Well, the NSA has been going for quite a while, and certain people who've worked there have realized what it's up to and what's going on and what it's doing. And they've left, and they've come to tell us about what is going on there. And so if you want to know about the NSA and what goes on in the NSA, you can go here to the YouTube. You can type in Richard Grove, William Binney, and then you can listen to a 2.5-hour interview with NSA whistleblower William Binney. And it's got 1.1 million views, and it was put there 8 years ago. And this is a 36-year veteran of America's intelligence community, William Binney. He resigned from his position as director for Global Communications Intelligence at the National Security Agency and blew the whistle after discovering that his efforts to protect the privacy and security of Americans were being undermined by those above him in the chain of command. The NSA data monitoring program, which Binney and his team had developed, codename Thin Thread, was being aimed not at foreign targets as intended, but at Americans, destroying privacy here and around the world. Binney voices his call to action for the billions of individuals whose rights are currently being violated. And it's a Tragedy and Hope production, tragedyandhope.com. Richard Grove, the man, he is just really at the forefront, cutting edge of what is going on in the world and understanding the big picture and getting that out to people through engaging information-rich and dense productions. He is not doing as many documentaries and interviews these days. Most of Richard's work is in the form of Grand Theft World. But this is one you can go back to and check out. 2.5 minutes. You could learn all about the NSA, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and why you should care about it, more importantly. And, you know, I've been told I shouldn't use this word should, but I think it's something you should care about. Honestly, I do. You've got no privacy. And what happens when you've got no privacy? 1984 happens. Woohoo! Can't wait for that. So this is the NSA, and they promote anti-white racism among their employees. So not only do they spy on everyone, everywhere, all the time, but they're also racist. But it's the good kind of racism, like I said. It's the benevolent, upbeat, feel good, make the world better type of racism. So this is a leaked document from the NSA revealing advocacy of divisive racial and gender ideologies with a particular focus on white people who are characterized as oppressive. Yes, that is what they're doing. A copy of the NSA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Glossary, which should be the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Glossary, and then it would be appropriately shortened to DIE, which is what it's all about. Published in May 2022, was recently obtained by the Daily Wire. The glossary defines 327 social justice terms and explicitly promotes critical race theory. This is the CRT thing again that we talked about in the BBC News Round article. And LGBT ideologies. And that is correct. They are ideologies. They are relativistic ideologies that come from a place of destabilization, destroying and demoralizing societies, cultures, and countries. That is their purpose, and they are weapons in the fight and the effort to do that. White fragility is defined as a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves. And these are hilarious. The defensive moves are argumentation, silence, and leaving the situation. So if somebody's being racist against you, towards you as a white person, and you argue back, then that means you have white fragility. If you just turn the other cheek and just remain silent and don't engage or take it on, that means you have white fragility. And if you leave the situation, then you have white fragility. Presumably, the only correct response that is brave and strong and doesn't denote fragility is to get down on your knees, beg for forgiveness, cry and plead, and promise that you'll never do it again. But, you know, I'm reading between the lines a bit here. So the term racism, cultural racism, is only defined in relation to white people or whiteness, which it claims is automatically deemed to be better or more normal than other racially defined groups. By who? And racism, institutional racism, creates advantages for whites and oppression and disadvantage for people from groups classified as people of color. This is a good bit too. A privileged group member. So who is privileged? Well, a privileged group member is people belonging to whites, men, if you own something, if you're in the upper middle class, if you're heterosexual, Gentiles, Christians, non-disabled individuals. So, apart from owning something, and that's me. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I didn't choose it. I was just born this way. Diversity initiatives in the military is receiving a massive amount of funding, 68 million, going up to 86.5 million, now at a whopping 114.7 million, which is for this upcoming year. Taxpayers' money hard at work. Your taxpayers' money is being used to fund good racism. So I hope you're happy with that and happy about that, because that's what is happening. And then also there's another article here about the FBI, and they're getting rid of Christians, conservatives, and COVID skeptics. And this is whistleblowers are saying that there's some sort of effort going on here to also get rid of a bunch of people, the unthinkables, the undesirables, the people who have the wrong opinions. And there's some back and forth in the mainstream media about whether or not these whistleblowers are actually legitimate, real whistleblowers. Let's see. Where was that quote? They are not, in fact, whistleblowers, said the Democrat. And the New York Times said these people do not meet the definition of whistleblowers. I mean, it would be a good exercise for me to look up what is the actual definition of whistleblowers and put that to the test. But a few quotes here as well. The interesting one is that the whistleblowers came out with their statements, blowing the whistle about this happening, and the next day the FBI denied the allegations without any investigation. You know, it's like classic thing of like, well, we investigated ourselves and we didn't do it, so they're wrong. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. We looked into it, we checked, and we didn't do anything wrong. So you can rest easy, you can rest well, and you can relax. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Okay, so we're coming up to the final part of the show. So I said at the beginning that I was going to name some names at the end, and that is exactly what I plan to do. And oh boy, have I got a name for you. This is one of the best names I think I've ever seen. It is it's not even it's kind of memorable, but it's one that might take you a few. You might have to roll it around a few times and you know, maybe write it on a piece of paper and stick it on your mirror before it actually sticks in there, because it is a hell of a name. But we're gonna kick this naming and shaming off with the name Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi. Yes, you heard me correctly. Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi. And I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Could be Coudenhove. Could be Coudenhove. And oh my God, his middle names are even better. Look at that. So he's Richard Nikolaus Egiro, Count of Coudenhove-Kalergi. Right, there you go. So, Austrian-Japanese politician, philosopher, and Count of Coudenhove-Kalergi, pioneer of European integration. Oh, integration. That sounds a lot like multiculturalism, doesn't it? So, we're going back to 1894. He was born, and he was shuffling around till 1972. So we're going, not back too far, but back long enough. He was the founding president of the Pan-European Union for 49 years. Look at that. That's a lot of 5-pointed stars, isn't it? His parents, his parent was a diplomat. His dad was a diplomat. And his mom was the daughter of an oil merchant, Japanese, Mitsuko Aoyama. And he became a Czechoslovak citizen in 1919. And anyway, I'm just kind of just indiscriminately listing off bits of his biography here. But why am I talking about Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi? Why is this name important in the topic of today's discussion? Well, the reason is that bit there. He is a pioneer of European integration. European integration, a pioneer. So what is European integration? It could mean many things. Maybe it is just the coming together of different countries in Europe in order to prevent wars from happening. Could be. I mean, there's no wars going on in Europe right now, is there? Oh, wait a second. Maybe. Oh no, we're not talking about that anymore. There's another one somewhere else going on. So he's been working. He was working towards the European integration. So what does that mean? Let's go down here to his pan-European political activism. So he was recognized as the founder of the first popular movement for a united Europe. All right, interesting. What else have we got down here? Views on race and religion. In his 1925 book, Practical Idealism, Coudenhove-Kalergi theorized that the historical development causing the death of European hereditary social classes would lead to an all-encompassing race of the future made up of Eurasian Negroids, and that would replace the diversity of peoples and today's races and classes with a diversity of individuals. Um, Eurasian Negroids replacing the diversity of peoples and races and classes who already live there. Interesting. That could definitely be interpreted in a different number of ways. And of course, Wikipedia helpfully tells us this quotation has been misunderstood by conspiracy theorists. But he also believed that a united Europe was desirable for cultural and racial reasons. In his pamphlet, Pan-Europa, Kalergi wrote that Pan-Europe should be the political expression of the European cultural community, that all linguistic nations of Europe would be gathered into one single racial nation. One single racial nation. How do you create a one single racial nation? Well, you need to get rid of all the differences between people. It's like you've got a bunch of different colors, right? Let's say you've got a pot of, green, a pot of red, and a pot of blue. How do you get rid of it? Well, you pour them all into the same container, and then you mix it up. And I don't even know what that color would be. Red. What did I say? Red, green, and would that be some kind of purple, blue? Black? I don't know. Brown? I'm not very good with colors. But the point is, the individual qualities and associations and behaviors of those three different colors that were separate, they were distinct, are now going to be they're going to be smushed together into a kind of just blob of sameness, and all the initial differences and characteristics are gone. So again, like anything, we're kind of realizing that the stated overt effort is the truth is actually the opposite, right? So anti-racism is actually racism, and diversity is actually homogeneity. So when you see anyone pushing anti-racism, they're actually pushing racism. And when you see anything or anyone pushing diversity, they're actually pushing, let's make everyone the same, wear the same kind of clothes, eat the same shit food, watch the same dumb stuff on Netflix, and be the same. And just make everybody the same, have the same values, have the same opinions, and there be no unique cultural identities, no unique cultural traditions, no unique cultural behaviors, right? And that is at least my interpretation of what this guy was working towards. So that is name number one, and a good place to start your journey of learning more about this whole thing. And what you can do is, linked under this video, you can go to his book here, Practical Idealism, English Translation. And this is 61 pages, so it's not a very long read. You can get through this probably in, I don't know, depends how fast you read. But is this quote true? Yes, it's right here. The Eurasian Negroid future race, externally similar to the ancient Egyptian, that diversity of peoples will replace diversity of personalities. Interesting. So it sounds like he said it will happen. So was it a prediction or was it a plan? Well, what's been happening since he wrote this book, and what has been happening, to you and your areas and the places around you and your cultural heritage and identity? Is it being kind of assimilated by the blob, by the Borg, or is it still strong? Are you living the culture and the behaviors and the traditions that your parents and grandparents and great grandparents lived? Or has it been sort of co-opted and taken over by a lot of stupid bullshit? And the other thing that I really wanted to mention with regards to this man is that he was the first recipient of the Charlemagne Prize in 1950. And I stumbled upon this bit of information and research kind of accidentally. And I was like, the Charlemagne Prize, what is that? Glad you asked. Charlemagne Prize. The Charlemagne Prize is a prize awarded for work done in the service of European unification. It's been awarded since 1950 by the German city of Aachen. Aachen sounds like a painful place where painful awards are given to people who are causing lots of pain. Aachen. Or it kind of sounds like somebody who can't sneeze properly. Anyway, so yeah, it's named after Charlemagne. And what's the history. You can read about the history there, who put it together, who decided to start doing this. And it was awarded to this gentleman who we were just talking about. Who else has won it since then? And this is where we're really getting into the names. Names, you said you wanted names. Here are the names. Boom, all laid out for us right here on this one single Wikipedia page. So it started with Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi and went via Winston Churchill, war criminal, Edward Heath, alleged paedophile, European Commission, well, I don't know how you award it to a commission, but hey-ho, Henry Kissinger, war criminal, recently died at 100 years old, Beatrix of the Netherlands, evil woman, Tony Blair, war criminal, Bill Clinton, likes, well, I mean, the less said about the Clinton, but you got to be careful what you say about the Clintons because they do make people disappear. The euro, I don't know how you give it to a currency. Pope John Paul II, well, you know, Catholic Pope. Angela Merkel, she has actually claimed, as we saw earlier, claims that multiculturalism has failed and doesn't work. Pope Francis, he is very much into pushing the woke agenda that I've covered in previous live streams. And of course, the actor and comedian Volodymyr Zelensky. And, you know, when I say actor and comedian, that is factually correct. He was an actor. He was a comedian. He dances around on stage in high heels, plays piano with his penis. And he was an actor in a TV show where he became president. And then later on, he actually became president. So that gives you a kind of good insight into the kind of people who are pushing the agenda. This is a good place to start when you want to learn about who they are, who is maintaining and running this scam upon the world's people. You know, you could start with any of these people, and so let's kind of, I think, pause there for a second. I'll get some books on the record for you. So the first one I want to get on the record, as we just saw him, and he died recently, is this one, The Trial of Henry Kissinger by Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens was a kind of a bit of a new atheist type guy along with Sam Harris, which, you know, don't hold that against him. Obviously, he never had much chance to look into that, but he did write this book called The Trial of Henry Kissinger, which is all about, well, I'll just read the blurb from the back. Drawing on first-hand testimony, previously unpublished documentation, and broad sweeps through material released under the Freedom of Information Act, Christopher Hitchens mounts a devastating indictment of a man whose ambition and ruthlessness have directly resulted in both individual murders and widespread indiscriminate slaughter. So that's book one. Book two, good luck to you if you want to find a physical copy of this, is Claire Ellis, The Blackening of Europe, Volume 1, Ideologies and International Developments. This is a critical analysis of the historical and ideological origins of the European Union with special regard to the consequences of these developments for the indigenous Europeans who presently risk becoming demographic and political minorities in their own homelands. Claire Ellis, PhD, was born and raised in the UK and moved to Canada at the turn of the century. She has written articles for the Council of European Canadians and the Occidental Quarterly, some of which have been translated and shared internationally. Although the PC, politically correct academic environment, was extremely hostile to her thesis, Claire persevered and was awarded her doctorate in December 2017. The Blackening of Europe is based on her findings. My challenge to you is to find a physical copy of this and, buy it and preserve it and read it if you can. If you can't, then you can go to the publisher's website, which is right here, and you can buy ebooks of Volume 1 and Volume 2. I found this completely by accident. I'd never heard of it. It was in a secondhand bookshop. It was the most expensive book there, and I just bought it right off the bat. And the lady who was serving me for that transaction gave me some dirty looks and said, "That's a very controversial book." And I said, "Have you read it?" And she said, "Bits of it." And the conversation ended there. So, that'll give you a lot of good context to what is going on, to what I'm talking about today, if you want to get some of the big picture knowledge of the kind of stuff we're talking about here. Okay, we're getting towards the end now, and I got this little video that I want to share with you. So let's go back to the screen here. So this is the cultural map. Let me make that big. Yes. And on the cultural map, we got the axis from the going vertically. We have towards the bottom is traditional values, and at the top, secular rational values. And then along the bottom axis, the horizontal axis, we've got survival values and the self-expression values. So let's just watch what happens on this map. And then we will go into. I'll show you where the research comes from. But what I want you to notice here is that this bottom left quadrant here is traditional values. So this is kind of like conservative values and values that lead to the survival of a society or a group or a culture or a civilization. Okay, so you really, if you want your culture to survive, you want to be down on this side of things. You want to be having survival values. You want to be caring about protecting and passing on to future generations your culture. Yeah, and you could be secular, rational, or traditional, but as long as you're in the survival thing, I think you're probably doing all right. So let's look at what happens. So this starts in 1981. There's a little year counter down here, and it ticks forward. So right there, we just saw France, Belgium, Netherlands, Italy, and Spain all start heading up in 1988 towards self-expression, secular, rational values, away from survival values and traditional values. And then we just got a lot more data, a lot more countries have arrived on the screen. Boom, now we got Norway, Germany, Sweden, Czech Republic, that one I can't see, Japan, Slovakia, Canada, all moving away from survival values. Germany kind of moving slightly back towards, but then nope. And then Sweden pushing way out into away from survival. Yeah, it's just kind of fascinating stuff, seeing how it moves around and settles over time. That only goes to 2014, so I'd love to see the continuation of that information. But that is from World Value Survey, which is the Ronald F. Inglehart Honorary Lecture 2023. So this is where you can get the data, the documentation, the findings and the insights, the publications that back up that what's called the Inglehart-Welzel cultural map. Ooh, I said a bad word there. Whoops, sorry for those of you that get hurt by bad words. Didn't mean to hurt you. My beautiful listeners, of course I never mean to hurt you. I should go without saying. This is the rundown of what they're looking at, what they were finding, right? And they've ended up with this map here, which is pretty wild and interesting to look at. And if you look down here, the sort of places that are more concerned with survival are the African Islamic places and the Orthodox Europe. But then when you get up to Protestant Europe and the English-speaking countries, they're not really concerned with survival anymore, and they're not really concerned with traditions anymore. More concerned with self-expression and secular values, which I think is kind of like suicide. If you're not concerned about tradition and survival, then you are concerned about other things that do not ensure your survival and survival of your children and your children's children off into the future. How's that happened? Does it just happen organically? Do cultures just suddenly become suicidal without any sort of nudge or push? Or is there concerted evidence, effort, a concerted effort that is well evidenced to nudge and shape and mold the minds and the hearts of people living in these places, to demoralize them, to grind them down, to make them feel bad about who they are and where they were born, to make them feel guilty, to make them feel like they're privileged and that they're racist and they're bad and they don't deserve the nice things in life. They don't deserve to have security and safety and freedom and fulfilling life full of meaningful work where you can add value to the lives of others and really make this place better and really ease some of the suffering and the pain that goes on in the world. Nope, not for you. That's not for you. That's for other people. You is, it's better for you if you just die. Just be quiet. Go and die somewhere. That would be better. That would be better for the environment. Don't have any children. They're bad for the environment, unless you're, a certain color. Like, you see what I'm saying? I'm being kind of facetious and sort of melodramatic for effect, but This is the message that's coming through our TV screens for our young people. It's coming through our universities. It is coming through our intelligence agencies in America, at least FBI and SA. But the same thing's happening here in England, and the same thing's happening in other countries. The mainstream media is completely complicit, as we've seen today, with their avoiding of certain words and certain terms and occulting of certain information. They push things in a unidirectional way. And the simple way to break that spell, as I've said so many times, is to test it. Do the opposite, and does that sit fine with you? And no, it doesn't. In that case, then it's not fine the way it's being pushed. So I hope I've painted a fairly comprehensive picture in less than 2 hours. 1 hour 39. I feel like I've been talking really quickly for this whole one. So I hope you've been able to keep up. I hope I've been making some sense, and I hope you find value in the book recommendations I've given you. The links, as always, will be underneath this video. And while I'm on the topic of links underneath this video, as always, if you are into what I do, if you have inclination to help me continue doing more of this, which I love doing, by the way. I should just put that out there. This is a labor of love. Here's my previous episode, which is Follow the White Lab Coats. This one was a lot of fun. This was all about our trust in science and scientism, and we got into a lot of articles here, and you can see that I was snotting and coughing all the way through this, but I think I managed to protect everyone's eardrums. We even watched a bit of comedy at the end of this, played a little comedy video. But underneath here, if you want to support me, if you want to help me keep going, if you want to help me do more of this and put these episodes together, if you find value, number one thing you can do is to share it to someone who you think will benefit from hearing it. Maybe they are on the verge of becoming wise to these kind of things, and they want further jumping off points for more exploration and learning, right? That's what I aim to do. The other thing you can do is to check out some of the links underneath the video. So, this first collection of links here, this is all about Richard Grove's Autonomy. So I mentioned earlier Richard Grove's interview with William Binney, the NSA whistleblower earlier. Richard also hosts this course called Autonomy, teaches it twice a year. It is all about, as you can see here, self-reliance and economic prosperity. It is about entrepreneurism. It is about creating freedom in the world, not only for yourself, but for others. In fact, the freedom that you will experience and gain for yourself is a function of helping other people solve their problems, make progress in life, and get more freedom for themselves, because everybody wants more freedom. Everybody wants more financial freedom, more time freedom, more freedom to spend with people they love, doing things they love, not being a slave to a ridiculous system that's exploitative and evil by nature, by the people who set it up. You need the tools and the skills and the knowledge and the information to break free of that. Richard Grove's got it for you, and you can learn about it here in the links. And there's a lot of this stuff is free. If you enjoy Richard's Bill Binney interview, then you can go here for his Freedom Vault, which has over 100 hours of forensic documentary content. So real big picture stuff, real eye-opening stuff in terms of understanding how the world works and what's the 100-year causal chain of events and people that have led up to where we are today, which explain all the things that are going on today and explain the problems we are facing. So if you need more information about what the problems are, you can go here. But if you know enough about the problems, then I would start exploring Richard Grove's Autonomy, or you can, if that's too much to bite off and chew, because it is a 12-week thing, and it's really not a 12-week thing, it's more of a rest of your life type thing. But if that is kind of a bit like, whoa, I got to change everything, if you're not quite ready for that, you can come here and you can learn how to form intentional and meaningful communities by the master Stefan Verstappen. You can learn about objective research from the master Ryan Christian at Last American Vagabond. You can learn the intellectual art of self-defense by Tony Myers, who is the logic professor of Grand Theft World. Or you can learn about Philosophy 101 by Jay Dyer and get in on the long conversation that is philosophy. How do we know things? What do we know? How do we separate fact from fiction in order to make better decisions in life? Then, if all of that stuff is not enough and you still want to do more, then you can support me by buying me a coffee. You can check out my Instagram, sign up there and look at some of the books and quotes that I share. And you can also join my Telegram group, where I just announce my live streams, and you can get ahead to hear when I'm going live, so you can join me and watch it, in real time, which is always more fun to be here in real time. So that is me. I'm done. 1 hour, 43 minutes. Good. I'm getting better at keeping these things kind of short and concise. So thank you so much for being here. It is just an honor and a privilege to be able to spend this time with you and bring you some information and perspective on what's going on in the world. It is a big, complicated system that I think we all it just helps us to know what's going on so that we can do something about it. Because Lord knows we need more people in the world that are aware and awake and wise to these agendas, so that we can just mock them and laugh at them and build better alternatives over to the side over here, which most people will, eventually go, hang on, those people over there are having it way better than us over here in, facial recognition has just decided you're a genocidal maniac and now you're in prison land. All right. With that ridiculous joke that was kind of silly, I am going to end it there, I think. So thank you so much once again. I hope you have a wonderful weekend out there, wherever you are, doing whatever you're doing. It's just, it's a great time to be alive. It's so much fun. It's so exciting. There's so much to learn. I have a lot of optimism for the future, and I would love to convey some of that to you. So, I'll do my best to do that. I'll keep showing up if you keep wanting me to. And even if you don't want me to, I'll probably keep showing up and doing this, as I've said before. It is a kind of cleansing experience for me to get all this stuff off my chest and put it out there publicly and not be sort of just grumbling and holding it inside. And why does not, you just put it out there, put your voice out there. It's so important in this day and age, more than ever before. All right. With that said, I'm going to end the broadcast very shortly. So, thank you. Take care.